Scientists sent a camera to the deepest point on Earth, and what came back on that footage triggered an immediate classified review. At nearly 36,000 feet below the surface, a depth where the pressure could crush a submarine like a soda can, something moved toward the lens that no marine biologist could categorize. It wasn't on any known species list. It wasn't behaving like anything that should exist. And the team that reviewed the footage went completely silent for 6 months. Join us, and let's discover what is truly hiding at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Let's go!
Number 13. Mariana Trench Plastic Bag. In 2018, a research team deployed a deep-sea lander into Challenger Deep, the single lowest point on the surface of planet Earth, nearly 36,000 feet below the ocean's surface. The lander's camera was designed to document whatever life existed at that extreme depth. What it captured instead became one of the most reproduced and most disturbing images in modern ocean science. Sitting on the sediment at the bottom of the world was a single-use plastic bag, the kind you get at a grocery store, intact, recognizable, sitting in a place that no human being had ever physically visited, in an environment so extreme that reaching it requires technology more sophisticated than most space missions. The image was not ambiguous, it was not a misidentification. It was a plastic bag, documented by JAMSTEC, the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, as part of their deep-sea debris database. And it was not alone. Analysis of the database revealed that single-use plastics represent the most commonly found human debris at depths below 20,000 feet. The Mariana Trench, the most remote, most inaccessible, most extreme environment on Earth, had been reached by human garbage before it was properly reached by human science. Researchers subsequently found microplastic particles embedded in the tissue of amphipods collected from Challenger Deep, meaning the contamination wasn't just sitting on the surface of the sediment, it had already entered the food chain at the deepest point on the planet. The place we had never fully explored was already compromised before we got there.
Number 12. Chimera. In 2016, researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were operating a remotely operated vehicle off the coast of Hawaii at depths around 6,700 feet when their camera picked up something that made the control room stop talking. Drifting slowly through the water column was a creature that looked less like a fish and more like something assembled from spare parts by something that had never seen a fish before. A long, whip-like tail, huge, ghostly pale wings, a bulbous head with a retractable, fleshy nose that moved independently as the animal navigated. This was a chimera, specifically a pointy-nosed blue chimera, and this footage represented the first time this particular species had ever been captured on camera alive. The significance goes far beyond a single sighting. Chimeras are not new animals. They are one of the oldest surviving vertebrate lineages on Earth, with a fossil record stretching back over 400 million years. To put that in perspective, they were already ancient when the dinosaurs appeared. They watched the dinosaurs go extinct, and they are still here. Their skeleton is made entirely of cartilage, not bone. They have venomous spines. Their eyes are adapted for deep, low-light environments with a reflective layer that gives them an almost metallic appearance on camera. And their retractable nasal organ is packed with sensory receptors that detect the electrical fields produced by other living creatures. They don't need to see their prey, they feel it existing. The footage from 2016 remains some of the most watched deep-sea video ever recorded.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Number 11. Snailfish. In 2023, researchers operating a deep-sea lander in the Japan Trench captured footage that immediately went viral across the scientific community. A small, pale, ghost-like creature drifted past the camera at 27,349 feet below the surface. It was a snailfish, and it shattered the world record for the deepest fish ever observed. But the details of what was on that footage are what truly disturbed the researchers. The fish wasn't struggling. It wasn't barely surviving on the edge of oblivion. It was moving calmly, almost casually, through an environment that should be physically incompatible with vertebrate life. Here's the thing about snailfish that scientists find genuinely unsettling. At these depths, the pressure is so extreme that the molecules inside a normal fish's body would literally stop working. Proteins, the machines that run every biological process, need to fold into very precise shapes to function. That folding process is exquisitely sensitive to pressure. Crush the surrounding water column hard enough, and those proteins lose their shape, stop working, and the organism dies. Snailfish don't die. Their biochemistry has been rewritten at a molecular level to remain stable under conditions that destroy normal biology. Their cells contain special stabilizing compounds, trimethylene oxide, that act like a chemical shield, protecting proteins from pressure-induced collapse. And the deeper the snailfish lives, the higher the concentration of this compound in its tissues. It's an automatic biological pressure gauge built directly into the animal's chemistry. We still don't fully understand how it works.
Number 10. Hirandelia gigas. If you dropped a piece of dead whale into the Mariana Trench, something would find it within hours. Not minutes, hours. From miles away, in total darkness with no surface current to carry a sense signal, creatures would converge on it like they've been waiting. The animal responsible for this almost supernatural detection ability is called Hirandelia gigas, a shrimp-like amphipod roughly the size of your finger that dominates the deepest trenches on Earth. What makes this creature scientifically extraordinary isn't just its pressure tolerance, it's a specific chemical defense that researchers discovered coating its exoskeleton. Deep ocean water is chemically corrosive to calcium carbonate, the material most crustacean shells are made from. At extreme depths, that chemistry should eat through a standard exoskeleton the same way acid dissolves metal. Hirandelia gigas solved this problem by coating its shell with aluminum hydroxide, a gel-like film built from ions dissolved in the surrounding seawater. The animal harvests raw materials from the environment around it and manufactures its own chemical armor in real time. This is not an analogy. This is a documented biochemical process that scientists confirmed through laboratory analysis of specimens pulled from Challenger Deep. The creature is essentially running its own material science program, producing a substance that no known surface crustacean produces in response to a chemical threat that no surface crustacean faces, and it does this automatically, continuously, without a brain complex enough to make a decision.
Number 9. Barrel-eye fish. At around 6,500 feet below the surface, still far above the deepest zones, something begins happening to fish eyes that marine biologists describe as one of the most extreme sensory adaptations in the animal kingdom. The eyes start growing, not slightly larger, grotesquely, disproportionately, almost horrifyingly large relative to the animal's head. The barrel-eye fish takes this to its logical extreme. Its eyes are transparent, barrel-shaped, tubular organs that point directly upward through a see-through dome of fluid sitting on top of its head. The fish literally looks through its own skull. But here's why this design exists, and why it's far more disturbing when you understand it. At depth, sunlight is completely gone. The only light that exists is bioluminescence, brief, faint flashes produced by other living creatures. Prey, predators, and everything in between occasionally emit tiny pulses of cold biological light. The barrel-eye's upward-pointing eyes are specifically optimized to detect the silhouette of a creature above it against the faint residual glow filtering down from hundreds of feet higher. It's hunting by shadow detection. It stares upward into the darkness, waiting for something to briefly interrupt a light source that is itself almost too faint for human instruments to measure. The sensitivity required to make that system work is so extreme that scientists still argue about the full range of wavelengths these eyes can detect. What's confirmed is that they can see things human eyes cannot, in a darkness we cannot imagine.
Number 8. Anglerfish. There is a creature in the deep ocean that has solved the problem of hunting in the dark so effectively that it barely moves at all. The anglerfish, specifically the deep-sea variety found in the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones, hangs nearly motionless in the water column. It does not chase, it does not search, it waits. Extending from its head is a modified spine tipped with a light-producing organ called an esca. This organ glows with bioluminescent bacteria living inside it in a symbiotic relationship that scientists still don't fully understand. The light pulses. In total darkness, from a significant distance, it looks like a small living creature. Prey approaches. The anglerfish doesn't move until the target is within striking range, then its jaws snap shut at a speed that is difficult to track even on high-speed camera. But here's the detail that genuinely disturbed the first researchers to document it. The anglerfish's jaws and stomach are both capable of expanding far beyond what its resting body size suggests. It can swallow prey twice its own size in a single strike. The stomach walls stretch to accommodate the meal, and the teeth angle inward, not just to pierce, but to make escape physically impossible. Once something is inside those jaws, the only direction it travels is deeper in. The anglerfish doesn't just catch food, it engineers a situation where losing food becomes geometrically impossible. Number 7. Ping pong tree sponge.
In 2016, researchers piloting a remotely operated vehicle along the walls of the Davidson Seamount off the California coast captured footage of something that looked so alien that the initial reaction from the science team was genuine disbelief. Attached to the rocky surface was a structure that resembled a small, pale tree decorated with perfect spheres, each one roughly the size of a ping-pong ball, each one connected to a branching stem by a thin stalk. It looked mechanical, ornamental, almost deliberately beautiful. It was a carnivorous sponge. The ping-pong tree sponge, Chondrocladia turbiformis, is one of the most visually striking and functionally disturbing predators ever documented in the deep ocean. Each of those pale spheres is covered in microscopic hooks made of silica, the same material as glass. When a small crustacean makes contact with the surface, the hooks snag it instantly, the same way Velcro catches fabric. The prey cannot pull free. The sponge then slowly envelops it with a thin membrane and begins digesting it externally, absorbing the nutrients directly through its surface. There is no mouth, there is no stomach, there is no nervous system making decisions. The sponge doesn't know it's hunting. It simply exists, covered in glass hooks, in the darkness, and anything that touches it becomes food. It has been found at depths exceeding 10,800 feet. And because deep-sea sponges grow extraordinarily slowly in cold water, the specimen filmed in 2016 was almost certainly decades old. It had been sitting there, in the dark, catching things on its glass surface for longer than most humans have been alive.
Number 6. Whale fall. When a whale dies in the open ocean, its carcass begins a journey that will take decades. As it sinks, it passes through multiple ecological zones, feeding scavengers at every depth. But the moment it hits the seafloor, especially in a deep trench environment, something extraordinary begins that researchers have only recently started to document in detail. Within hours, mobile scavengers detect the carcass from miles away and converge. Sleeper sharks, hagfish, and enormous numbers of amphipati arrive first. In time-lapse footage, the feeding activity looks violent enough to make viewers uncomfortable. A 40-ton whale carcass can be reduced to bare bones within 18 months by this first wave alone. But the story doesn't end there. After the soft tissue is gone, specialized worms called Oseidax, nicknamed zombie worms by researchers, bore directly into the whale's bones, extracting lipids through a symbiotic relationship with internal bacteria. The bones themselves become a food source that can sustain an entire localized ecosystem for up to a century. Scientists have identified over 400 distinct species associated with whale falls, many of them found nowhere else. Some of these species appear to exist in a permanent state of migration, moving from whale fall to whale fall across the deep ocean floor, as each one is gradually consumed. The whale fall is essentially a temporary island of life on the abyssal plain, creating its own ecological succession cycle in complete darkness, under crushing pressure, at the bottom of the world.
Number 5. Nereus ROV. On May 10, 2014, the research vessel Cape Hatteras was operating in the Kermadec Trench northeast of New Zealand. Deployed beneath it was Nereus, an American hybrid remotely operated vehicle built by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution at a cost of approximately $8 million. Nereus was not an ordinary deep-sea robot. It was specifically engineered to operate at full ocean depth, the only vehicle of its kind in the world at the time, capable of reaching the absolute bottom of any ocean trench and collecting physical samples. It had already successfully reached the bottom of Challenger Deep in 2009, making it one of only a handful of vehicles in history to do so. On this particular dive in 2014, Nereus was operating at approximately 31,000 feet when the team on the surface lost contact. They waited. The signal did not return. When debris began surfacing around the ship, small fragments of white foam and pieces of the vehicle's exterior, the team understood what had happened. Nereus had imploded. The pressure at that depth had overcome the vehicle's structural integrity in a fraction of a second, collapsing it catastrophically and silently at the bottom of the ocean. No warning, no distress signal, no recoverable wreckage. $8 million of the most sophisticated deep-sea technology ever built was destroyed instantly and completely by water pressure, the same pressure that living creatures in that environment survive every second of their entire lives. The implosion of Nereus remains one of the most sobering demonstrations of what the deep ocean actually is.
Number 4. Ultra black fish. In 2020, researchers from the Smithsonian Institution published a paper that generated immediate attention far outside the marine biology community. They had discovered 16 species of deep-sea fish with a skin structure so specialized that it absorbed 99.95% of all light that hit it. These fish were not simply dark-colored. They were, by measurable scientific standard, among the darkest biological materials ever recorded. Darker than Vantablack, the synthetic ultra-black coating developed by engineers at enormous expense. The mechanism is extraordinary. In normal fish, pigment-containing cells called melanosomes are distributed throughout the skin in various sizes and arrangements. In ultra-black deep-sea fish, the melanosomes are packed into an extremely thin, densely structured layer with a specific geometry that traps incoming photons and prevents them from bouncing back out. The structure functions like an engineered light trap, the same principle used in advanced optical instruments. But this fish evolved it. Under pressure, in darkness, over millions of years, natural selection produced a material that human engineers spent decades and significant resources trying to replicate artificially, and these fish still outperform the synthetic version. The purpose is anti-detection. In bioluminescent flashes from predators or prey, even a tiny reflected glint from scales can reveal location. These fish reflect essentially nothing. They are, in practical terms, invisible. In the dark, against the dark, producing nothing, just watching.
Number 3. Dumbo octopus. At depths where most complex life struggles to function, a creature with 8 arms, 3 hearts, blue copper-based blood, and a brain wrapped entirely around its esophagus navigates the darkness with what can only be described as casual elegance. The Dumbo octopus, named for the large ear-like fins on either side of its mantle, has been recorded at depths exceeding 13,000 feet, making it the deepest living octopus genus known to science. But what makes this animal scientifically unsettling is not its depth tolerance. It's what researchers discovered when they examined a hatchling specimen in detail for the first time. In 2021, scientists documented a Dumbo octopus hatchling and found something completely unexpected. Unlike virtually every other cephalopod, which hatches in a larval stage requiring specific environmental conditions to survive, the Dumbo octopus hatchling emerged fully formed, fully functional, complete with all adult organ systems already developed. No larval phase, no period of vulnerability at shallower depths, no need to migrate. It was born ready for the deep ocean, the full crushing pressure, the total darkness, the extreme cold from the first moment of independent life. This means the species has eliminated one of the most dangerous periods in any animal's existence, early development. The young have never been exposed to conditions different from those of the deepest ocean. They've never known anything else. They were built for the abyss from before they were born.
Number 2. James Cameron. On March 26, 2012, filmmaker James Cameron, the man behind Titanic and Avatar, climbed alone into a vertical torpedo-shaped submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger and descended into Challenger Deep. The dive took 2 hours and 37 minutes to reach the bottom. He became only the 3rd human being in history to reach the deepest point on Earth and the first to do it solo. What he found when he arrived was not what he expected. Cameron had prepared extensively for the dive, equipping the vessel with high-definition cameras, sampling equipment, and scientific instruments. He expected a rich, visually dramatic environment. What he described after surfacing was the opposite. A desolate, flat, featureless lunar landscape. Almost nothing moving, almost nothing visible. A place that felt, in his own words, like complete isolation from all of humanity. But here's what the science team found when they analyzed the samples Cameron brought back from the bottom. The sediment was not dead. It was biologically active, containing microorganisms, amphipods, and organic material that had no business surviving at that pressure and depth. And the samples contained something else: synthetic fibers, man-made materials. At the deepest point on Earth, on one of the first occasions any human had physically visited it, the evidence of human industrial activity was already present in the sediment. Cameron's dive confirmed that we had contaminated a place before we had properly explored it. He has spoken publicly about how profoundly that realization affected him.
Number 1. Mariana Snailfish 2023. In September 2023, a joint research team from the University of Western Australia and Tokyo University of Marine Science deployed a free-falling lander into the Japan Trench, a deep-sea canyon running along the northeastern coast of Japan. The lander carried bait, lights, and cameras. It was designed to document whatever life existed at extreme depth. What it captured at 27,349 feet below the surface broke a world record that scientists didn't expect to see broken for years. A small, pale, almost translucent fish drifted casually into frame, unhurried, unbothered, moving through an environment where the pressure is equivalent to 50 jumbo jets stacked on a single square inch of surface, and looking completely at home. It was a snailfish, and it was the deepest fish ever recorded on camera in human history. But the record itself isn't the most disturbing part. It's the behavior. Every expectation about life at that depth suggests an animal at its absolute biological limit, barely functioning, barely moving, conserving every fraction of energy just to stay alive. What the footage showed was the opposite. The fish was active, oriented, responding to its environment, displaying none of the physical stress markers researchers expected to see in a vertebrate operating that far outside the known survivable range for fish. When the team analyzed the depth data and confirmed the number, the lead researcher stated publicly that the find forced an immediate reassessment of where the vertebrate depth limit actually sits. Because if a fish can function at 27,349 feet with that level of apparent ease, the real limit might be deeper than anyone currently believes. And whatever is living at that limit, we haven't found it yet.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.